The air war in Ukraine has taken some major turns recently, which is affecting the rest of the war. One is that Ukraine has done extremely well in developing more drone attacks and more drones to attack Russia, more than twice as much since March as the Russians have been able to attack the Ukrainians. And in the last 24 hours, the Ukrainians have attacked 18 different regions, oblasts within Russia. That's more or less all of Russia west of the Urals. More than that, data and forensics at Sky have been able to locate all of the Wildberries warehouses that have been attacked in recent weeks. Now, these warehouses are huge warehouses. Wildberries is the Amazon of Russia, online retailing. And these warehouses contain an enormous amount of stock from all the small and medium enterprises, the small-scale suppliers that keep their stock in these warehouses for delivery. And those warehouses have been attacked all the way through Russia, even in Crimea, even in Novorossiysk, so that Wildberries itself, the company, is now talking about establishing in Kazakhstan new warehouses in 2027, 2028, which tells me that Wildberries think that this war won't be over anytime soon. That's a major plus for the Ukrainians. Now, the Ukrainians say this is justified because Wildberries are a component supplier to lots of military systems, which indeed they are. But you could say that about many retailers because most military systems these days are full of civilian components one way or another. Nevertheless, that's what the Ukrainians argue is their justification for hitting Russia really hard in this particular way. In particular, a drone from Ukraine fell onto a holiday resort at Osipovka, which is a very popular beach resort in the Black Sea part of Russia. And a lot of families go there for the summer. This drone was fired at from the ground. We can clearly hear machine gun fire as the drone passes over. But this is the moment when the drone descends onto the beach and causes a lot of fatalities and injuries. It's quite hard for the Ukrainians to get over this one. They are morally responsible for sending the drone more than anyone who tried to shoot it down is morally responsible. If you send a drone to a different target, undoubtedly this was aimed at something else further on. Nevertheless, it got shot down, it's got to land somewhere, lands on the beach. That is Ukraine's responsibility, and they will find that politically quite difficult. Nevertheless, the Russians are responding to these attacks in the way you would expect. There were very heavy Russian attacks last night, but in particular in Sumy, in Dnipro, in Mykolaiv, in Belgorod, Dnistrovsky, a lot of casualties were reported. The Russians are doing what you would always expect them to do. But there's another way in which the drone war is actually affecting the war at sea between the two sides. The Ukrainians have been extremely successful in the last few weeks at attacking Russian shipping in the Sea of Azov. And the Ukrainians say that they've attacked more than 100 Russian ships in the Sea of Azov. That's not confirmed, but nevertheless, the Russians have certainly closed the Kerch Strait from about the 15th of July because they obviously don't think it's safe to get in and out of the Sea of Azov. So the Ukrainians have had an enormous victory in closing off that sea and closing off all of the grain and the oil which the Russians were trying to export from those ports along that seacoast. But in response, because those ships have been targeted, international ships working for Russia, the Russians have started to target international ships working for Ukraine. And Ukraine's big ports of Odessa and Chornomorsk, which were working through a very safe route all the way down the coast, hugging the coast through the Bosphorus, into the Mediterranean and out to world markets. And that route, which has been a very effective route for the Ukrainians for the last 2 or 3 years, may now be suspect because the Russians are now attacking ships taking that route. They're prepared to do that because their ballistic missiles, which they're getting from North Korea, are able now to target those ships, as are their drones. And so the irony is that having won what I call the Battle of the Western Black Sea a couple of years ago, the Ukrainians may be about to lose the political benefits they got and the economic benefits they got from winning that battle because they've won the Battle of the Sea of Azov. In that respect, one battle may balance another. And there's a parallel here between what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in the Iran war. The Iranians have effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz because they've made it dangerous. They don't have to physically close it, just make it dangerous. And it is possible that the Russians are able to close the Black Sea to Ukraine, not by closing it with mines, but just by making it dangerous. And if that's the case, then the war in Ukraine is taking on a new strategic dimension for all of us.